Hey guys, welcome back to the CCE podcast. Today we'll be discussing LGBT representation in various forms of media, including social media, literature, music, and film. Specifically, we're going to explore how each of these individual types of media, as well as together, contribute to the normalization of the LGBT community in everyday society.
We should define what social justice is first. The dictionary defines social justice as the fair treatment and equitable status of all individuals and social groups within a state or society. However, there are many ways that the LGBT community engages with social justice depending on the medium.
So I did research on LGBTQ representation in film, and then I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and somehow got to the topic of communism and the Cold War specifically. So during the Cold War, there was the Red Scare, and that's like 1950s, like late 1940s, 1950s. And actually, there was also the Lavender Scare, which is kind of linked to the term Lavender Lads, which is more derogatory towards gay people specifically, and that's why it's called the Lavender Scare. So basically, the government was like, yo, there are gay people in the government, like, in this country, and that's because the communists are sending gay people to break our morale.
Wow. Interesting.
I know. And they were like, we need to fire these people. This is like national security issues. We have to stop. And alongside kind of this fear of communism, there was also this deep homophobia that caused like tens of thousands of US citizens to lose their jobs, and there were protests related to that. So that's why I think like social justice also gets included into the Red Scare and the Lavender Scare.
Yeah.
But it still gets felt to this day, I think, was the most important part. There's still very stereotypical characters that kind of follow the set of guidelines to spot a homosexual, as according to like a document, like they're very flamboyant, they like pastels, which is also where lavender came from. Yeah, so that kind of general fear for the gay agenda to kind of ruin the country really tied in, and eventually I think I got to the Hays Code, which I also did research on, and that was just a set of guidelines to keep kind of entertainment being produced like full of wholesomeness and morality, but really it was mostly focused on like Christian values. And with that deep homophobia, it was hard to not connect film and Christianity and homophobia together, and I think that was really important. But yeah, what about you guys? Any similar policies?
I did the part with the literature, but the main part that I researched about was that the current, like, the rights that LGBTQ people had been like a hard work, and their rights are like normalized to public in modern society with like various mediums. But like about the one article that I researched about, it emphasized the role about young adults in LGBTQ community to actually make like who they are as right now. So moving towards to the modern society, there were like more chances to express themselves with broader platforms and better acceptance of variety. So it was like knowing that being different is not wrong gave adults better courage to express themselves. And literature played like important role in that, because there were various authors and literature tools to like not directly express themselves, but as like implying that everyone's right matters and their identity also has like a significant impact on our like society that we're all like living in.
Kind of like building off that a little, like my research was on music, and how you were saying like literature is helpful in like people kind of connecting, like I had fallen across like a study done on LGBTQ focused health education course in college, and it basically showed that like art, music, and like photography, theater, like all those types of mediums and like writing are like crucial in building empathy like between people inside and outside of the community. So like, well, like empathy in general I think is really important in helping understand one another, but like the use of like different mediums to kind of construct the empathy in creative ways.
Yeah, like not only for the people who are like part of the LGBTQ community, but like people who are not like actual part of them can actually bond through like the literature and also like music. So I felt
Like it carries a message that's kind of universal, not just
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I think it's the part where you talk about empathy and like connection is really important. My research was about normalization through social media, and there was one source that I found that kind of connects with that a little bit, and it talks about how like people might feel more comfortable like disclosing themselves when talking about experiences that they have like related to their sexuality or gender in terms of like bullying, harassment, and things like that. And this can be attributed to like a bunch of different things, like minimize social pressures, and the fact that it's like less scary than having a face-to-face conversation with someone that you're
Yeah.
close to, or you know, maybe they just want to like connect with like-minded people or people with similar experiences that aren't necessarily in their like close family or friends. And that just kind of shows how like social media is kind of like a unique outlet in that way for sharing experiences. And it's also interesting because people might interact with the content differently as well. Like other than like this kind of contrasts like representation through like music or literature, for instance, because people can actually like put a face to the experience, and so again they might feel like more of a connection or like be able to build that empathy, like you said, with that individual that's like sharing their story online.
Actually, all of these examples are great because I did find a study that talks about kind of, so basically they were these communication professors who also focused on psychology, and they talked about the parasocial contact hypothesis, which is basically like kind of exposures to these positive portrayals of minority groups in the media can basically reduce prejudice. And they were trying to kind of find like evidence that supports that through showing like a group of teenagers to like early adulthood participants, like two gay characters kissing, and it was actually really interesting because they found a range of responses. So I assume that those who were less exposed to kind of like a positive portrayal of a gay character or a gay person was definitely more disgusted seeing that kiss compared to those who might be more exposed to it, having more like an accepting response to it. And I thought that was really interesting. So that was just what y'all talking about reminded me of.
yeah, like definitely like normalization through exposure, like constant exposure. Like similarly, like with music, I think one interesting thing, I think in any of our research though,
Yeah.
like I feel like allies kind of play a pretty big role in like pushing that normalization, because like in order for these like kind of experiences to get out of just the community, like allies and people outside the community have to help support and like push out people onto platforms, like specifically in music, say like bigger names like say like Taylor Swift or like Lady Gaga, like people that aren't part of the LGBTQ plus community, but but they're still like strongly advocating and like giving these artists a space to like share their experiences and kind of normalize. And I feel like it has worked slightly, because like I feel like in this last year alone, like pop music has been very like, a lot of the big names have been part of the LGBTQ community this year, like Chappell Rowan or like Troye Sivan, like or Billie Eilish, like all these big names that are on the top of charts, they're like part of the community, and they were people that had been previously like, not all of them, like some have gotten there themselves, but like some of them without the help of someone else may have been prejudiced because of like preconceived stereotypes.
And to summarize our discussion today, we found that the LGBTQ plus community engages with social justice by working towards social acceptance and inclusion through different forms of media. This includes advocating for LGBTQ plus representation and breaking down harmful stereotypes and stigma.
Thank you for tuning in to the CCE podcast. Next week, we'll talk about hot dogs or not dogs, the complications of what constitutes as a hot dog. Yay.
Thank you for listening.